Hey, it's Benjie Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Jaan Ranne. We're going to be discussing his amazing book, The Signature of God, available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. And people, listen, The Signature of God, of course, is the anchor for today's interview. That's really what we're going to be fleshing out. But there's two other books that Jaan has written as well I really want you to go and check out. One is called The Search for Truth, Creation or Evolution, followed by the second, which is The Wiles of the Devil. Check out both of those books right after you pick up The Signature of God. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. And I will say, Jaan was brought to our network, People of Distinction, by some of the best publishers in the business, Good River Print and Media. So if you or anybody you know have a book that they'd like moved, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give. Contact Good River and have them move it for you. And you can find out more information on them and their wonderful team at goodriverprintandmedia.com. I want you all to sit back, strap in, have your notebook ready, because the education is going to be wonderful. When you run and pick up the book, it's going to be a fantastic adventure for you to embark upon. And without further ado, let's jump right in. Jaan, thank you very much for being a guest with us today, man. How are you?
Good, and thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. We're really looking forward to this and all of the information we're going to be able to receive from you today, Jaan. Now, before we go into your books, I know we have a lot of information already to cover. Start by telling our listening audience a little bit more about yourself and your background, please.
Okay, with a name like Jaan Ranne, it's kind of a strange name. I was born in Montreal, Canada, in 1954 to Estonian immigrant parents who fled the war from Russia's occupation of Estonia.
Wow.
I grew up in the Montreal area, and I went to my first college with a science major for 3 years before changing colleges and going in for forestry, which I graduated in 1977. In the forestry school, I met my future wife, and we moved together to Nova Scotia in 1982, and by that time we had 2 daughters. I worked in the provincial forestry sector until 1989, when we moved, now with a son as well, to London, Ontario, to go to my third college to get my teacher's license. I graduated that in 1993 and moved back to Nova Scotia, where I taught high school math and sciences in winter and continued working independently in forestry in the summer. In 2001, I was invited to teach math and sciences to high school students in Prince Edward Island, our smallest province. In 2006, retired from teaching and went into full-time forestry until 2010, when we moved back to Ontario. And my hobbies are nature photography and woodworking.
Jaan, wow, man, that is absolutely incredible. Listen, we're going to have to invite you back onto the network, okay? Not to discuss this book or any other books you write in the future, but just to discuss your background, man, because my goodness, I'm sure you have stories for days, and we would love to hear them. That is absolutely incredible, man. First and foremost, it sounds like you have constructed a beautiful family around you, so nothing but continued success to you and all of your loved ones. And the anchor, as I mentioned before.
Thank you very much.
Of course, absolutely, man. The anchor for today's interview, as I mentioned before, is all about your book, The Signature of God. So tell us a little bit more about it.
Okay, as Benjie mentioned, the book looks at the 6 days of creation as described in Genesis. And so it's broken up that way, as in chapter 1, for instance, day 1, we're looking at water, which is implied creation there because it doesn't say it was actually created, and also light, which was revealed. So we look at those aspects and scientifically look at the aspects of light and water and what uses they have this day and age, including laser surgery and all that stuff. In day 2 now, the atmosphere was created, so we look at that. Day 3 is a look at the soils, rocks, and vegetation. That's probably the biggest section of the book. And I go into detail about the soils that we have and about the rock, different types of rocks. And of course, there's pictures, colorful pictures of all of these, as much as I could. mostly taken by myself. Day 4 is a look at the planets and stars. Each individual planet we take a look at and its characteristics. Day 5, the fish and the birds. So we look at basically the families of fish and the families of birds, and that could be quite an exhaustive list, but I tried to keep it short. Day 6, of course, is the animals and man, with man taking most of the part because it is an incredibly intricate design that God has created for man. Mm-hmm. So as I said, all these are accompanied by full color photos, most of which I took myself. At the end of the book, I also included a section on Noah's flood and the scientific proof for it to have been a global flood. You can't really have this present world without knowing something about the flood. So that's basically what the book goes through.
I love how you finished off by saying that's basically, like there was anything basic about that explanation there, Jaan. I love it. Thank you very much. Next concept I want to touch up on is your title, man, because there's something about it that really just catches the eye, right? I mean, it really just stops you. The signature of God. I'm not going to assume where that title comes from and the connection it has to the narrative. Jaan, please go into an explanation for my listening audience. Why did you choose that title to be the representation?
The signature of God came from looking at paintings and seeing the artist's signature, usually at the bottom right-hand corner of their painting. And the uniqueness of every created thing, I think, is God's signature. Like, you're different from me, I'm different from anybody else, and that is God's signature on you. He created you, that's his signature. So that's where that came from. And there's nothing completely identical. Even the leaves on the same tree are slightly different, either in size or shape or something anyway, that there's always slight differences. And even if I look at my own hands, my right index finger is slightly longer than my left index finger. Again, the uniqueness, the individuality is there. There's no one like me in the entire world. There's no one like you in the entire world. God has made you unique. That is his signature. That's where I get that name from.
There it is. I love it. Jaan, let's talk about inspiration, man. What inspired you to embark upon this journey and write this narrative?
When I was 3 years old, my parents bought a cottage lot north of Montreal in beautiful Laurentians. And by the time I was 13, they had added an additional 30 acres. So that's where I learned to really love nature, walking through it. I have 4 kilometers of trails back there right now. So I developed a love for nature there. When I went to forestry college, I discovered that there is a design for the trees and plants, which made me think that there was more to nature than just evolution. So that really inspired me right there.
People, again, we're here on the line with Jaan Ranne. We're discussing his amazing book, The Signature of God, available for purchase through Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. Make sure you check out his other 2 books as well. One is called The Search for Truth, Creation or Evolution. The other is The Wiles of the Devil. Check them both out, available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Jaan, next question that I'd love to get into, man. So we've covered inspiration, something that may be closely related, but I think it gets more to the heart of the matter. Why did you feel that this was a book that needed to be written?
Well, when I met my wife in forestry college, she challenged me to rethink my views on evolution. Up until that point, I was evolutionist through and through. So she says, why? And I says, I don't know, it's the way I've been taught. So it was firmly cemented in my mind that evolution was true. And of course, it's taught as fact on cartoons from grade kindergarten right up to grade university level, postgraduate work, et cetera, et cetera. So, who am I to argue with that? Mm-hmm. So I was 25 when I learned that evolution was a complete lie. Once I started studying it scientifically, the flaws were glaringly apparent for evolution. But then if I went back and studied the science of creation. Those were true to the science that we know. So that's what inspired me. That's why I felt that the book should be written. So inspired by the 6 days of creation, I patterned my book after that.
Listen, Jaan, when you make a statement like evolution being a complete lie, I mean that's a drastic statement there, and I love it. Here, let's
Yes.
turn the pot here. Now, to follow up, when you say something like that, I have to ask about the research. So, Jaan, what type of research did you do in preparation for the book, man?
Well, as I said, I was brought up total evolutionist, and so that aspect I had to study on my own. I had to see, what does evolution actually say? And so I looked at the science behind it, and really I found that it's claiming things that just aren't physically possible. For instance, in Genesis, everything is created after its kind. So you cannot jump from, say, a dinosaur to a bird. Okay, the only reason we have millions of years in that time frame is because if I told you that the reptile turned into a bird overnight, you'd say I'm crazy. But over millions of years, maybe it could happen. So after much research, I came out to the fact that, evolution and creation are diametrically opposed. And so you got to believe one or the other. And you got to take one or the other by faith unless you really do your research, and then you'll find out the flaws.
Jaan, what would you say was a highlight for you in writing this book? Or if not a highlight, maybe something that surprised you that you weren't anticipating before you began?
Highlight, I would say, would be giving God the glory. Like, I'm a nature photographer, and I worked in forestry for 33 years. I've seen a lot of creation. We travel a lot. We've been through all across Canada, been to Europe. And you see all kinds of interesting things that God has created, both landforms, plants, trees. Trees are my best hobby, so that's where I mostly look at. But, everything there is kind of like, I just wanted to give glory to God for everything he's created. So that really was the highlight for me in doing this.
Mm-hmm. Now, what are you hoping to see people do with this book?
Well, I think it would be a good reference book for a school library, especially a Christian school library. Well, like I said, I do delve into the classification systems and the families that have been created, and then how they've microevoluted into what they are now. And that means like someone from the dog family turned into dingoes and wolves, et cetera, but they're still within the same family. And that's what after its kind really means.
And following off of that, Jaan, connected to this interview in particular, as we're starting to close out, what is one thing amongst all of the valuable information that you've already given, but what is one thing you really want our listening audience here to take from today's interview?
Well, I think I would really like people to start questioning their evolutionary beliefs if they have any. Like I said, most people believe in evolution because it's taught as fact. If you really take the time to study the difference between creation and evolution, you'll see that they cannot coexist. There's no middle ground. You can't have day-age theories. You can't have anything else. It's either God is completely right or God is not. If you look at the different dating techniques like argon to potassium and all those, you'll notice that they all start with assumptions. Every single one of those dating techniques starts with assumptions. Mm-hmm. So right there, it introduces error. So I'm, for one, to believe the Bible the way God intended.
There you have
and that's what I really like to get across. Yeah.
Fantastic, Jaan. Thank you very much for sharing. Listen, final question here. I love having this platform. I'm an artist myself, but I'm in a different medium. But I love having the platform still to pay it forward in a sense. Now, for any new writers out there listening in at the moment, Jaan, what are some words of wisdom that you can relay to them about the journey they're getting ready to embark upon?
Well, the most important thing is to write something that you're passionate about. If you're not passionate about it, it will just flop, really, unless you're really good at writing. And finally, be yourself. Don't try to imitate anyone else's style. Remember, God created you uniquely. He has given you the talents he wants to use.
I love it.
And that's what all I have.
I love it. Listen, that is more than enough, Jaan. This has been fantastic. People, you know where you have to go. Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You have to pick up a copy of The Signature of God by Jaan Ranne. Pick up his other 2 books while you're at it. Once again, they're called The Search for Truth, Creation or Evolution, followed by The Wiles of the Devil. The education is real, and at the end of the day, you can take the information, choose to believe it, or look the other way. But the conversation is so important. And just getting yourself to think, man, I absolutely love it. Jaan, thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Well, thank you again for having me. It's been a pleasure.